Obviously I've seen his films, but I don't sit down and watch them. It's kind of hard, you know, sometimes it's nicer just to remember him how he was as a young man and as a beautiful individual, rather than seeing it plastered up there. No death is a good thing, but the way you learn about it is something that you never forget, never will. Switch the television on and there's my son's body being placed into an emergency services vehicle. We all were just trying to call him and say, you know, pick up, Heath, pick up. What the hell's going on? You know, we didn't believe it. His sister Kate, she was really the last one to speak to him and warn him not to mix prescription medications with sleeping tablets that he was wanting to take. It was just the crazy concoction of all of those chemicals that caused his body to just go to sleep, just shut down, you know, just phew.
Absolutely accidental. You know, this was a young man in the prime of his life. People do not realise how dangerous these drugs can be.
In Victoria alone, we lose a plane load of people every year through this overdose of prescription medication.
1,242. That's the number of Australians that died from accidental drug overdose in 2015, according to data just released. Nearly 70% of those were caused by prescription meds. And many more Australians live with long-term addiction to drugs dished out by doctors.
I hit a little sort of 10-foot kicker, and as I came down, my legs from the knee down stayed in the one position, and I did like a 360. That's when I was prescribed endone. Pure euphoria, the way it could just take all my pain away. After that, I went back for refills even though I wasn't in pain. I kind of started doctor shopping. I was like, this is great.
Rob was a delightful little boy. Just had this really cool, laid-back thing about him. He was nicknamed Rock and Roll Rourke. Look, golden child.
I was never really into drugs or even drinking. Like, I wasn't a drinker. I was just me, you know. At my heaviest days, I'd go through a box a day of oxynorms, and I was mixing that with benzodiazepines. That kind of fucked my whole life up. I couldn't hold down a job, ended up in rehab, and I didn't care. I honestly didn't care if I lived or died.
One day he rang me and he said, "Mum, I think I've got a problem with prescription drugs." He looked like a heroin addict. It would have been a matter of weeks that happened.
Rourke was being prescribed two of the most addictive types of pharmaceuticals. Benzodiazepines, or benzos, are tranquilizers that are usually prescribed for anxiety or insomnia. That's your Valium or Xanax. Then there are opioid-based painkillers like oxycodone, morphine and codeine. 1 in 10 people prescribed these opioids become addicted, and it doesn't take long.
For some people, this can be as short as a few days. Their bodies and their brains will say, well, I want to keep having that. And in order to get the same effect, to get the same relief, you need to take more. The other thing is that when you try and stop, that you get significant withdrawal symptoms.
Overdoses from benzos and legal opioids have been rising steadily over the past decade and are now responsible for almost 3 times more deaths than heroin and amphetamines combined.
I guess a lot goes through my mind when I come out here. How we could let that happen to him. I'm visiting my son Isaac. He was playing AFL and hurt his back. I guess we trusted in the medical profession that he was receiving the right help. Isaac was working at the Tumbarumba Hotel. He was living in town with his girlfriend. They were very happy together. It was 6 weeks off his 21st birthday. So he was planning that. He was talking to me about having the party and he said, ring me tomorrow. And we signed off like we always do. Love you too, Mum. And that was the last time I spoke to him.
That night, Isaac worked a shift at the Tumbarumba Hotel and then went home with his girlfriend around midnight. He woke early the following morning. Leaving his girlfriend to sleep in, he went to the lounge room.
It was a beautiful autumn day and the phone rang. And I picked it up and it was his girlfriend's dad. The rest of it it was all a blur. When we arrived, the ambulance was there and the lights were off. So I knew as soon as we got there, because the lights were off, that my boy was inside and he wasn't alive.
The coroner's report describes the scene.
It appeared that the deceased had been lying on the couch playing his PlayStation games machine directly prior to his death, as a game was still active on the television screen.
The coroner concluded Isaac's death was caused by an accidental overdose of opioids and other prescription meds.
The amount of drugs which were dispensed is staggering. The various medications had been prescribed by 3 medical practitioners.
And then there's the list of medications. They found a whole list here and it goes over the page as well. All legal drugs. We wanted to understand why, a 20-year-old had been prescribed that range and that volume of drugs.
I couldn't believe the amounts of these pills my son was taking. I had to go with him to the doctor who was prescribing him the drug. He said, I've just got government approval for him to have like 6 months' supply of it. And I said, my son has got a raging addiction to these drugs. He could die.
We have a system that is set up where it is cheaper and quicker and easier for me to write a script for opioids than it is to support my patients to go to hydrotherapy, physiotherapy, exercise physiologists. It's a broken system that drives the prescribing.
The prescription of opioid-based painkillers has quadrupled in the past decade. Doctors now write around 14 million prescriptions for opioids each year.
Why has it happened is a really interesting thing. And from the late 90s, we've had tablets, oral tablets, that are opioid-based. We've not had those in the past. And we had this idea that was sold to us that these tablets would cure people's chronic pain. The problem is that there is no evidence to support it, and what we're finding now is increasingly the benefit of using those medications for chronic pain versus the risk, clearly it's outweighed.
The government's committed $16 million to software for the scheme to blacklist prescription addicts.
In July, after years of lobbying by organisations like Scriptwise, the federal government announced funding for a real-time monitoring system to make it harder for doctor shoppers to score meds.
Real-time prescribing is part of the solution, but we need more support. We need more training for doctors around how do we do this. If you have someone that is already an addict, once this comes in, then what is going to happen to them? Are they going to go to a doctor who will look it up and say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to treat you, you're an addict? For me, that is a tragedy.
If I'd had any knowledge of just how addictive like these drugs are, I would definitely never have taken them. I became like a monster. Yeah.
Full of hatred, full of pain, just like a beast. I've wanted to walk away, but I have to find a way to make him believe somehow that he can get through this. Otherwise, he'll die. And that's not acceptable.
My mum's literally saved my life, yeah. I'm relearning how to feel and basically live. I've got a long way to go, but compared to this time last year, I would feel like a completely different person.